Imagine for a moment that you are walking along a path, minding your own business, when someone shouts at you, hurling words meant to wound. The first impulse of the human heart, of course, is to react. We feel the sting of the insult, and in that moment we desire nothing more than to return fire, to make sure our dignity is defended and our reputation intact. Yet this very instinct, this drive to answer insult with insult, often leads to a greater suffering. The truth is, we are not defined by the words of others. The moment we believe an insult to be a reflection of our true worth, we allow another's perception to become our own. We relinquish the peace that resides within us, and like a flame extinguished by the wind, we lose our clarity of mind. But the wise person knows that an insult is a shadow passing over the landscape of the soul, not the soul itself. Consider, then, how we might respond to the world's cruelty. The first step is self-awareness, an understanding that the insult does not change our inner essence. A calm, steady mind recognizes that the words spoken are not mirrors of who we are, but simply reflections of another's momentary state. A person who is secure in their own self-worth will not allow the momentary anger of others to unsettle their peace. Secondly, it is essential to remember that emotions, while powerful, are not always our best guides. In the heat of the moment, when the sting of an insult is most fresh, the urge to respond is often overwhelming. However, to react impulsively is to surrender control of the situation. The wise person knows the importance of taking a step back, pausing before replying. In that pause, clarity emerges. We can see that the person who insults us may be acting out of their own pain, insecurity, or frustration. To respond in kind is to perpetuate a cycle of suffering, while a measured response offers the opportunity for greater understanding. We must recognize that those who insult others are often doing so out of their own inner turmoil. Insult is rarely about us. It is a reflection of the insulted's battle within. If we can train ourselves to see beyond the offense, to look into the soul of the person who lashes out, we will discover that the anger directed at us is, in fact, a cry for help. By responding with compassion, we do not lower ourselves, rather, we elevate the interaction, offering an opportunity for healing and understanding, not merely conflict. 1. Self-awareness and inner peace are foundational elements in maintaining composure when faced with insults. To understand this fully, we must first acknowledge the nature of insults and their limited power over us. An insult, at its core, is merely a projection of another person's thoughts and emotions, often driven by their own insecurities, frustrations, or unmet needs. When someone insults us, they are offering a reflection of themselves, not an accurate representation of our own worth. Therefore, self-awareness involves recognizing that an insult, while painful in the moment, does not alter who we truly are. It does not define our character, nor should it shape our sense of self. When we are insulted, it is easy to fall into the trap of internalizing the negative words, assuming they reflect some inherent flaw in us. This response comes from a lack of self-awareness and an over-reliance on external validation. It's essential to understand that our value as individuals is not determined by others' opinions or judgments. Our worth is inherent and independent of how others perceive us. If we are secure in this understanding, an insult no longer carries the weight of truth, but rather becomes a fleeting moment, passing without causing lasting harm. True self-awareness requires a deep connection to one's inner self, a recognition of our strengths, values, and capabilities. When we know who we are, When we have established a solid sense of identity and self-worth, insults lose their potency. This is because we are no longer looking to others to confirm our value. We already understand it. An individual who is aware of their own worth will not allow the opinions of others to shift their sense of self. When insulted, they are able to view the words for what they truly are, opinions shaped by another person's limited perspective, not a universal truth about themselves. The importance of inner peace cannot be overstated in this process. Inner peace acts as a buffer between our internal state and external events. When we cultivate peace within, we create a resilience that helps us remain grounded, even in the face of provocation. This peace is not passive or complacent. It is an active state of harmony with oneself. This peace is an active state of harmony with oneself. It is the understanding that our thoughts and emotions do not need to be controlled by external forces, especially by those who seek to destabilize our tranquility. When we are at peace within ourselves, insults and criticisms may sting momentarily, but they do not uproot our sense of calm. Instead, we can acknowledge the pain, allow it to pass, and return to our center. Self-awareness and inner peace also allow us to discern the intent behind an insult. Often, insults arise not from a place of truth, but from a place of personal struggle. The person who insults you may be projecting their own feelings of inadequacy, frustration, or fear. By recognizing this, we can respond with empathy rather than defensiveness. This is not to excuse their behavior, but to understand that their words are a reflection of their internal battles, not an accurate judgment of who we are. When we can separate the insult from our personal identity, we regain control over our emotional response and can choose how to react with wisdom and grace. Rational response over emotional reaction is an essential skill in maintaining composure when faced with insults. In moments of provocation, the natural tendency is to react impulsively. Our emotions surge, and the desire to defend ourselves, retaliate, or win the confrontation becomes overwhelming. However, acting on these impulses often exacerbates the situation and can lead to further conflict. A measured, rational response, on the other hand, can diffuse tension and demonstrate maturity. To master this, we must recognize the importance of pausing before responding, allowing ourselves to step outside the immediate emotional storm and gain clarity. The first step in responding rationally is understanding that an emotional reaction, while immediate and seemingly justifiable, is often driven by the primitive instincts of our fight or flight response. When insulted, our body reacts as if it is under threat, triggering an emotional surge designed to protect us. This is an automatic response. Our brains are wired to defend us when we feel attacked. But while this reaction is instinctual, it is not always the most constructive one. An emotional reaction in the heat of the moment can lead to regret, confusion, or escalation. This is why it is crucial to recognize the power of pausing before we speak. By taking a brief moment to breathe, reflect, and collect our thoughts, we shift from an impulsive reaction to a more thoughtful response. A rational response does not mean suppressing emotions or pretending that we are unaffected by the insult. Emotions are valid and real, but the key lies in managing them in a way that allows us to act with intentionality rather than impulsivity. When we allow ourselves a moment of pause, we give our minds the opportunity to assess the situation objectively. Instead of immediately lashing out, we can ask ourselves a series of questions. Why is this bothering me so much? Why is this bothering me? Is this person's opinion truly a reflection of who I am? How can I respond in a way that aligns with my values and maintains my dignity? These questions help to create a mental space in which we can shift from an emotional reaction to a rational one. To pausing, it is crucial to remember that responding emotionally often feeds into the cycle of conflict. When we react to an insult with anger, sarcasm, or retaliation, we escalate the situation, drawing both parties further away from resolution. It can be tempting to meet insult with insult, to win the argument, or to prove that we are right. However, this only plays into the hands of those who seek to provoke us. A rational response, by contrast, de-escalates the situation. When we respond with calmness and poise, we break the pattern of conflict and refuse to be drawn into unnecessary drama. We can assert our position without resorting to personal attacks, demonstrating control over our emotions rather than allowing them to control us. A rational response does not always require a verbal reply. Sometimes the most powerful response is silence or a non-confrontational gesture that signals we are unaffected by the insult. In some situations, choosing not to engage with the insult directly is the wisest course of action. This allows us to avoid furthering the conflict while maintaining our peace of mind. Rationality comes into play when we assess the value of engaging in an argument at all. Is the insult worth responding to? Or is it more beneficial to disengage and preserve our own emotional well-being? To this, a rational response often involves empathy. While it might seem counterintuitive, responding with empathy can be an effective way to neutralize a hostile situation. When we consider the possibility that the person insulting us may be acting out of their own pain or insecurity, we create an opportunity to respond with understanding rather than defensiveness. This approach requires a shift in perspective. Rather than viewing the insult as a personal attack, we begin to see it as a reflection of the other person's struggles. By responding with kindness or offering a neutral statement, we can often disarm the situation and even open the door for a more constructive dialogue. This is not to say that every insult should be met with compassion, or that we should tolerate disrespect. The key is to choose our responses based on a rational assessment of the situation rather than emotional impulse. In some cases, a firm and assertive response may be necessary, but it should always be grounded in calm and clarity, not in anger or vengeance. The ability to respond rationally is a sign of emotional maturity. It reflects an understanding that we are not slaves to our emotions and that we have the capacity to choose how we respond to life's challenges. By developing the discipline to pause and reflect, we empower ourselves to rise above the petty insults of others and engage with the world in a manner that reflects our true character. Meditation, a rational response rather than a knee-jerk emotional reaction, allows us to maintain our dignity and, in many cases, to diffuse potential conflicts before they escalate further. The value of compassion and empathy plays a crucial role in how we respond to insults and how we maintain our inner peace amidst such challenges. While it might seem natural to meet harsh words with similar aggression or to defend ourselves when attacked, cultivating empathy allows us to see beyond the insult and consider the deeper, often hidden motivations of the person who is lashing out. This means this approach shifts our perspective from viewing the insult as a personal attack to recognizing it as a reflection of the other person's struggles, insecurities, or unmet needs. By understanding the dynamics at play, we can respond in a way that diffuses tension and maintains our dignity without being drawn into an emotional confrontation. Empathy involves the ability to put ourselves in another person's shoes, to imagine what they might be experiencing in that moment. When someone insults us, it is easy to feel as though their words are a direct reflection of who we are. But this is rarely the case. In most instances, the person who insults us may be acting out of their own unresolved frustrations, insecurities, or emotional distress. Perhaps they are projecting their own pain onto us because they feel powerless, misunderstood, or angry about something in their own lives. When we choose to empathize with this possibility, we break free from taking the insult personally. Instead of seeing the person as an enemy, we begin to see them as a human being who is struggling in their own way. An empathetic response to an insult allows us to detach from the negative emotions that may arise within us. We recognize that their words are more about them than about us, and as a result, we can meet their anger or criticism with understanding rather than retaliation. This shift in perspective can be incredibly liberating because it frees us from the need to defend ourselves or prove our worth. When we empathize with someone who insults us, we are not condoning their behavior, but rather choosing to respond with grace and wisdom, understanding that their actions stem from their own personal battles. This empathy enables us to maintain a sense of peace, as we are no longer reacting to the insult, but responding to the person as a whole. Empathy has the power to disarm hostility. When we react to an insult with empathy and compassion, we often find that the other person's aggression begins to soften. This is because anger and hostility are often fueled by the need to be heard or understood. When we respond with kindness or acknowledge the pain that may lie beneath their words, we invite a more productive and less emotionally charged conversation. In some cases, a simple recognition of their feelings can diffuse the tension and pave the way for healing. By showing empathy, we extend an olive branch instead of escalating the conflict, creating an opportunity for dialogue and understanding. Practicing empathy allows us to become more emotionally resilient. It helps us to see insults not as direct attacks on our worth, but as expressions of the other person's emotional state. When we develop this emotional resilience, we are better equipped to handle future insults without being as deeply affected by them. We begin to see that insults are not a reflection of our true selves, but rather a momentary lapse in the other person's emotional regulation. As we continue to practice empathy, we develop a more stable sense of self, one that is not easily shaken by the words of others. The power of empathy in response to insults also lies in its ability to break the cycle of negativity. Often, when one person insults another, the recipient of the insult feels compelled to retaliate. This creates a cycle of negativity in which both parties are trapped in a battle of egos and emotions. However, when we choose to respond with empathy, we disrupt this cycle. Instead of feeding into the conflict, we introduce an alternative response, one that seeks to understand and, when possible, to heal. This can be transformative, not only for the individual involved, but also for the relationship between the two parties. By responding empathetically, we model a higher standard of emotional maturity and invite the other person to engage on a more compassionate level. Empathy, however, does not mean that we should tolerate disrespect or allow others to mistreat us. It is important to recognize that showing empathy does not equate to submission or acceptance of inappropriate behavior. Empathy allows us to understand the root causes of the other person's behavior, but it also empowers us to set healthy boundaries. And to genuine relationship, it provides the emotional clarity to respond in a way that maintains our dignity while simultaneously recognizing the humanity of the person who has insulted us. In some situations, this may mean calmly and assertively addressing the behavior, but always from a place of understanding rather than anger. Empathy is not about excusing bad behavior, but about responding to it in a way that preserves our inner peace and prevents us from being swept away by the emotional currents of others. When we approach insults with compassion, we not only protect our own emotional well-being, but also contribute to a more peaceful and understanding world. By seeing others through the lens of empathy, we foster connections that are based on mutual respect and understanding, rather than on conflict and division. This is the transformative power of empathy. It has the potential to heal, to disarm, and to create a space where peace can flourish, even in the face of adversity.